Today, I want to talk about running away from self, right?
Okay.
Something that normally happens in our everyday life. People
Uh-huh.
who have not come to terms with who they are, actually.
Uh-huh.
So today we're basically going to be talking about running from self in the
Uh-huh.
basis of the dangers of thinking too much and
Uh-huh.
thinking too little.
Hmm.
So now thinking about ourselves there and our hopes, our feelings, our desires, our future is a tricky task
Mm.
that most spend time trying to avoid. Yeah?
Yeah.
We keep away from ourselves because we keep away from ourselves because so much of what we could discover
Mm.
threatens to be painful to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we might find in the background that we are deeply furious, maybe, of or resentful about someone or certain people we are meant to love. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of us loving, we become resentful or angry with them. Or
Mm.
maybe we might find how much ground there is to feel inadequate and guilty on account of many errors and misjudgments that
Mm.
we have made before, right?
Mm.
So we might recognize how much how much is nauseatingly compromised and needed need to be changed about our relationships
Mm-hmm.
with others or
Mm.
in our career. So basically, what I'm trying to say, Netoban, is we not only have a lot to hide,
Mm.
but we are liars of genius. That's my favorite quote of today that I had. That we not only have a lot to hide as
Huh.
human beings, but we are liars of genius.
Yeah.
So it's part of the human tragedy that we
Mm-hmm.
are just natural deceivers,
Mm.
and our techniques are multiple and are close to invisible.
Mm.
So we are going to be focusing on these two habits, the ability or the habit of thinking too much and the ability to think too little.
Less. Mm.
Ne-
Mm-hmm.
And in all of this, in attempt to run away from self, even though I think ixesha lethu alizifumene namhlanje, but I think I'll cover at least one of the two, and maybe we can cover one tomorrow. And
Uh-huh.
when I'm party.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Masbon, how far can we go?
How far can we go? You remind me of that game we used to play in primary. How low can you go? I will
My
get very
goodness.
far.
You're
We'll
saying
get
you're
very
talking
far.
about, thinking less and the overthinking.
Yeah.
How do you define overthinking and thinking less? And uphinde utuba, this
Well,
is a form of trying to escape from ourselves. Because I think
yeah,
perhaps maybe for me, that's why I want you to define it for me, is because I would have
yeah.
thought of, thinking less as a form of really running away from ourselves. But thinking more, it in land. So, can you just bring clarity to me, and I believe even to the listener at home?
Um, basically, nah. What I'm trying to say, let's start with one.
Uh-huh.
Nah, this is, I think, is the one that many people want to know. How did I come to the conclusion of
Mm.
seeing it as a self, as a way of running away from self, which is thinking too much? No,
Uh-huh.
thinking too much. When we think too much, in essence, we are filling our mind with impressive ideas,
Uh-huh.
which blatantly announce our intelligence to the world. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Think too much, we have ideas, and ideas are translated into words, and those
Uh-huh.
words show our brilliance to others.
Uh-huh.
So you see, even through this thinking or through this ability to think too much,
Uh-huh.
we secure degrees on
Mm-hmm.
on 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 institutes of advanced study
Uh-huh.
or some in editorial boards of scientific journals.
Uh-huh.
So our minds are crammed with data. Yeah?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Doesn't need so so much so that we can wittingly inform people on a dining table who wrote the plays of Shakespeare, debating
Uh-huh.
about who was Genghis Khan, or historical figures or events that changed the world before. So we deploy
Uh-huh.
knowledge and
Uh-huh.
ideas that carry our enormous prestige to stand guard
Mm.
against the emergence of more humble but essential knowledge from our emotion or our
Uh-huh.
state of emotion.
Mm.
So thinking too much or having that ability has its pros and cons, right?
Mm.
And many of times it's seen as something good,
Mm.
and the bad side of it, it's normally shunned, right? That's
Mm.
why I want to bring up the other side of the coin, that yes, you may be able to acquire certain knowledge, certain prestige through
Uh-huh.
thinking,
Mm.
but even though it's bringing you benefits, it does not escape the fact that too much of everything is bad for you, right? Too
Yeah.
much of anything is bad for you. Does
Uh-huh.
it say like that? I hope it
Mm.
goes like that.
Mm.
So even thinking too much,
Mm.
um, many people end up using it as a form of a shield to
Mm-hmm.
shield away the part of their life that requires them to feel rather than to think. I,
Mm.
I'm, you're talking to someone who is a high believer in thinking more than feeling. That's one
Uh-huh.
of my basic philosophies,
Mm.
head over heart. Those who know me, they know. I always say this to them: think more and feel less.
Mm-hmm.
But that has also showed me that by doing that, you're actually suppressing your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
even where you're supposed to be feeling, and you end up becoming this person who would rather
Think.
use the pool of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and etiquette that you have
Mm.
to 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 mute your
Mm.
emotion.
Mm-hmm.
You might agree with me, you might not. That's the whole point, by the way, for
Mm.
you to agree or not to agree. It gets you thinking. It's the late night thought after
Uh-huh.
all. Né?
Yeah. Now,
So I hope I answered your question
now
there.
tell me, because you talked about running away from self. Now, when like I'm gonna carry on with this line of reasoning of thinking too much, and kind of like flexing my intellectual muscle. How does then that get me to really escape myself? Because one of the things that come to mind when you talk about escaping from one's self, it is the idea of trying to kind of like find a space where I don't actually have to think about myself, my inner contradictions, my, as you
Right.
said, my emotions, and therefore let me find. And there's so many different ways where that we can develop and that we have of that become a form of escapism. We talk
Mm.
about movies, we talk about the series that we watch on TV, and to some level and to a certain point they can be good, to a point where they can be detrimental, as you said, that too much of anything is bad. And I do
Yeah.
understand how those they really translate, because sometimes I can spend hours on end watching a series, watching a movie, and never taking some time to actually confront myself. Ukuthi, hey Toban, you've been doing ABCD for such a long time. Ithini into yakho when it comes to your life? You have been feeling like this. Why are you feeling like this? Why do you have a sense of resentment towards
Right.
ABCDE? Now
There,
talk to me
there, there,
about uh-huh.
there lies your answer, right, in what you just said. When
Mm.
you have that moment when you say, "Hey, Tovani, what are you doing with your life?" and blah blah blah, and which translates to what you have done. Né? Now,
Uh-huh.
remember when I said to you that we keep away from ourselves because of so much of what we could discover threatens to be painful, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
now, by doing this kind of thinking,
Mm.
obsessive thinking, and we want to acquire this and that will complement us, your
Uh-huh.
degrees, your diplomas, which is good,
Uh-huh.
but many a times people bury their personal stories beneath an avalanche of expertise, right? So
Uh-huh.
the possibility of a deeply consequential, intimate inquiry is deliberately left out to seem feeble
Mm.
and superfluous, right? What do I
Yeah.
mean? I'm trying to say to you that that moment when you say, what have you done with your life? The first thing you think about is what have you done, right?
Uh.
Not how you feel,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mm.
And the neglect of feeling becomes a problem because feeling is part of your life as well. So that's
Mm.
why I'm saying that we can't bury this part
Uh-huh.
through overthinking and basically what I'm trying to say is there has to be a balance
Uh-huh.
between your thinking and
You
your
feeling.
feeling.
Uh-huh.
If you know the yin and yang concept,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
it's something like that. You have to find the balance,
Uh-huh. And
not to
mm,
you huh? You
y-
don't deliberately leave
uh,
out that
one.
other part of your life because you
Mm.
think it's feeble and superfluous, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
le nto kuthiwa indoda ayikhali. If indoda ibingakhali ngesingenazo iinyembezi, but we have iinyembezi because we have to cry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And
When
there's
needs be, we
something
have to
to
cry. Even
what you are saying. There's something to what you are saying because I'm just really thinking of the fact that sometimes we can neglect how we feel to our detriment. Because I remember, I think we were having this conversation with Obushale on refining perspectives that emotions are not as bad as we have painted them out to be. Because what emotions basically are, they are signals and they alert us, and that is why it is always important for us, as you say, not to hide behind the intellectual muscle that we can flex and show to
yeah,
people, without inquiring of why do we feel the way that we feel, why
right,
am I feeling like this? Because I believe that there is a treasure that is yet to be found. And when we start to really ask ourselves those questions, why do I feel the way that I feel? Where does this
yeah,
resentment come from? Where does this hatred come from? Where does this fear come from? Because sometimes I think we can even become delayed even in this attempt of trying to accomplish and succeed in so many things, simply because we are ignoring the signals, which are our emotions and how we feel. And we end up 20 and 30 years to come, why am I say living such a distorted type of life and I'm not at peace with myself? And the reason is because you have been suppressing how you feel for all this period of
yeah,
time. And I think it's even much easier to live life trying to please other people and be content with that when you are a person who easily suppresses your emotions.
yeah. So by doing that, you see that people lean on the glamour of being learned to
Uh-huh.
make sure that they don't need to learn too much
About
that
themselves.
hurts, right?
Mm.
Because once you reach that stage, what you were just talking about now, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna begin to hurt. You're gonna
Uh-huh.
begin to discover truths about part of yourself that is not completed by your studies, your achievements
Mm.
academically,
Uh-huh.
and you're going to start to hurt. Now, to avoid that, many suppress it absolutely. But the
Mm.
problem is, you can't run away from yourself.
You
It's
can't.
always going to be there.
And perhaps
Sooner
maybe
or
this is
later
the
it's
reason
going
why
to pop
today
up.
we have this problem, yeah, depression. Because looking at this culture of running away from ourselves, it is much more prevalent today more than ever before.
Right. It's at an all-time high because of 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 today. There are many ways to escape or
Uh-huh.
gala, or
Mm.
many ways that are deemed to be an escape.
Escape. Uh-huh.
I'll give you an example about food.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Ukutya kwakudala, food in olden times used to be organic. Food used to
Uh-huh.
be healthy,
Uh-huh.
and you need to cook it the right way. It will take you time for
Uh.
you to cook, my friend. You will have to wait. You did not have 2 minute noodles at Dala. You did not have these kind of foods we have now.
Fast
These
foods, all
genetically
these.
modified
Uh-huh.
food.
Mm.
They're a great way to escape cooking a healthy meal, but they have detrimental outcomes,
Effects.
if you
You.
know what I'm talking about.
What a great
So
analogy and
they
parallel.
have, yeah, that's why we have people. I have food, my friend. You'll never go wrong with food. Whenever you need to make an example, go with food. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I want you as you're drawing that parallel, and it's a beautiful one. We have like 5 minutes to go and end our conversation today, to
Yeah,
close it off and really put emphasis where apho kudingeka khona ukuthi ubeke ubhontsi khona, and close off today's late night thought, because for me, really, you've kind of like opened another kuthiwa ke ezingqondweni zethu sineminyango eminintsi, so you've opened one door that was that had been shut previously, when you talk about how we even sometimes
yeah.
use, intellect thinking in a materialistic way, so as to avoid, dealing with ourselves.
True. Now, very quickly, as we are left with 4 minutes, now I'm going to try to explain this as much as in depth as possible, because the opposite of it becomes dangerous as well, which
Uh-huh.
is the danger of thinking too little.
Mm.
And here we pretend that we are simpler than what we actually are. We
Mm.
have this version of common sense, of leaning to a version of robust common sense, so that we may ward off
Mm.
our intimate parts as well, and we run away from our awkward complexities, because
Uh-huh.
humans are complex. They are built
Mm.
like that. So
Uh-huh.
when we think too little, we imply that not thinking too much is the base of evidence of superior intelligence. So
Uh-huh.
people who think too little also think that, no, we think too little because we are smart. That's why you have Skolweni, that group of guys who would see others studying, and they'll be like, no, I'm not going to study because,
Yeah.
and yeah, yes, the way
Yeah.
they try to paint it as a superior form of intelligence, that
Yeah.
I don't need to think, but also I have to run away from the way I feel, because there is an uneasiness of
Mm.
of not being able,
Sure.
or rather choosing to think too little. There will always be that uneasiness that you'll have to
Mm.
suppress. And normally people like this will deploy bluff strategies. They will
Uh-huh.
ridicule against the
Sure. That's
complicated
so
accounts of human
sure.
nature. So
Mm.
we they sideline the avenues of personal investigations as unduly fancy or weird. So
Mm.
when you now have to defend thinking too little, you'll start to paint thinking too much as something that is
Foolish.
fancy or weird,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mm.
You are a nerd, you are
Mm.
this, you are that. But the real thing you have to be attacking is not thinking too much. But
Mm.
the real case to be attacking is you being unable to confront yourself as to why you don't have the certain ability
Mm.
to think, or
Mm.
rather to deal with your feelings, because it all boils down to one, to this thing of running away from a part of yourself, which is the
Hmm.
way you feel.
Hmm.
I believe we'll continue on this conversation tomorrow on the late night thought.
Wow, wow, beautiful, beautiful. And as you are saying, as we're about to head out, together, I was just thinking, I was reading Trevor Noah's book, Born in Crime, and he kind of touches on exactly what you are talking about, how those who think little, they kind of like ridicule those who think much, and and
Yeah,
vice versa. And he speaks of even the fact that why you'll find that it is so difficult to get out of our townships and our locations, because most of the times, as especially amongst guys, you'll find that people are ridiculed, those who are trying to work their way out of that low life type of system. And he
yeah,
narrates a story of one guy that was working, in fact, that was always with them, in the township, and bahlala ekoneni and kube mnandi and all that. And then this guy now was employed, and after he was employed, the guy started teasing him about, hey, uyaphangela, hey, uphangelela umlungu, ungena 9 to 5, hey, kanjani wena ungumxhaga kanjani, uzobe uxelelwa what to do and all of that. And day after day the guy would go to work, up until the guy sabotaged himself. And looking at what happened, you can clearly see ukuthi what zonke ezi ridiculing remarks awayiziva from his friends, got to him, and he was like, no, let me go back to the old way of
yeah,
doing things and just be at peace with my community and with myself. So he kind of like points out why sometimes it's so difficult for us to get out of our environments, because sometimes the people who think little, they have the power to ridicule us out of our dreams. Well, the time now is 1 minute after the hour of 11 o'clock. Kanye, man, to everyone who's listening at home.
yeah. I'd like to say thank you for listening, and I'm sorry again for being late. And I believe that there will be no technical problem. Self knowledge, in the word to, isn't a luxury. It's
Mm.
a basic condition for you to have a measure of sanity
Uh-huh.
and inner comfort. For me, Kaya Notolwana, out.